Welcome back. So let's dive deep a bit more into hysteresis loss and eddy current loss uh, in this lecture. Uh, of course, we have seen magnetic circuits. We have been seeing magnetic circuits in quite some detail now. But in a sense, this is a connecting with what we have been doing earlier, a slightly different perspective and some more details. So again, here I have a magnetic circuit, a circular ring or a toroidal kind of a ring, and number of turns. Apply a voltage source V here, creates a induced EMF E here. The current pushed into it is I, and the magnet core is, this is a alternating voltage source here. So therefore, the on the BH trajectory, the hysteresis loss is traced like this. So we have already seen that the area under this area has to have some connection with the hysteresis loss, and we had seen earlier when we had calibrated this with flux axis and this with MMF axis, that it is uh, it is the total wattage or energy loss which is associated with the uh, with energy loss which is associated with this cycle. I just want to know, recalibrate this in B and H instead of flux and MMF, and see what happens. So again, uh, recall that H can be written as Ni by L, and in this figure here I have set this H value somewhere here. I'm sorry, I have taken an operating point at this M. So this OM in our case is nothing but equal to, at this point of time, ampere turns per meter. The B that is produced by this H, since it is shown on the rising curve, is this value B. And now let's say that the current in the coil increments by small di. So the H increments by small dh, and consequently the B increments by small dB. Okay. So what is the, whenever there is a change in the flux, because there is a change in the B, there is a change in the flux, then there is going to be a induced EMF which is going to be generated in this coil. So we will get V is equal to E is equal to N d phi by dt, which is equal to N times, let's say the area of cross section is A, so then N dB by dt volts. Usually make a practice, of always writing units along with the quantities. That's very important. I am taking area of cross section A for this core, and the mean circumference to be L. So now what is the instantaneous power? Instantaneous power is V times of I, or in other words, Ni A dB by dt. Just multiplying the above equation with uh, current which is flowing, which is I. So the instantaneous energy which is pumped in that incremental, I'm sorry, the incremental energy which will get pumped due to this change in time interval dt is going to be equal to Ni A dB, but Ni, the MMF, can be written as H times of L. So therefore HL A dB, and I will group H and L and A together, because the unit there becomes the unit here is that of volume, which is the cubic meter of this core which we are having. So therefore we will get that dE is HdB joules per unit volume, HdB joules per unit volume, and hence in a hysteresis cycle we hence in an hysteresis cycle the it's a closed integral, so that's what I am showing here. The loss which is going to be hysteresis loss is going to be so many the hysteresis loss is going to be so many joules per cubic meter. So when we the point which I am trying to say is that if we are given a hysteresis curve on BH curve is given, hysteresis curve is given as a BH curve, then we can immediately for that material estimate what is going to be the hysteresis loss per unit volume. And if we are given in terms of flux and MMF, then we get the total hysteresis loss associated with that geometry. That's the point which is that's the point that I am trying to uh, drive here. Good. Now, if you come to see here, I have shown you different hysteresis in this picture here. I have shown you BH curve hysteresis when the operating voltage is gradually increased. As the voltage is increased, the V equal to N d phi by dt. So therefore, when Vm increases on a sinusoid, the phi m also which is on the sinusoid will increase. So the Bm on the sinusoid will also increase. And so what you see is bigger and bigger hysteresis curves are traced until the core somewhere starts hitting the saturation. Here is when it saturates. So in this picture, two things come out. One, if I plot the loss as a function of Bm, the max B that I am reaching on this Bmax, if I plot it as a function of Bmax, which is being hit here, like it's here, then here, then here, then the loss is monotonically increasing. So the loss is monotonically increasing. Now suppose if the loss was increasing linearly, okay, suppose the loss was increasing linearly, then it would look something like this. Suppose the loss was increasing quadratically. Okay, so maybe I will restrict myself to, because I don't want to show a negative loss, so I'll restrict to first quadrant. So the loss, it will look something like this. If the loss was increasing quadratically, then it would slightly change the slope here. Then it would look like, I'm sorry. It is. It will look something like this. Of course, this could be this. There could be some intersection like this. That's not the point which I am trying to say. That depends upon the slope. But the point is this. This is a loss. If the loss was proportional to Bmax of square, then let's say I would have got this curve 2 and I get curve 1 if the loss is proportional to Pm. No, it's actually turns out that it's neither this or that. It will depend upon the material. And so in general, this hysteresis loss, the hysteresis loss is going to be proportional to some B max. It is an increasing function, so it by to the power of some n, where the n could range from approximately 1.5 to 2.5. So this is the kind of thing. This is the kind of function that you will get when you look at the hysteresis loss. Two more terms that I want to bring out here. When this is getting saturated, Bmax is such that you are hitting saturation, onset of saturation. Then when the current is brought back to zero, the the B which is remembered, because the dipoles have got aligned, magnetic dipoles have got aligned, and so even when you remove the you gradually reduce the current and bring it to zero, some memory is there, and so some remnant flux is there. So this remnant B, when this is at the point of saturation, is called remanence. And from here or here, you have to, if you want to demagnetize this effectively, the magnet itself, you can say, when you want to demagnetize it, what you have to do, you have to apply now current in the opposite direction, and the H that needs to be applied, which is proportional to the current that needs to be applied, so that the B becomes zero, that is, it is demagnetized. That is that point is called as the coercive force. So for example, coercivity of alnico, which is an alloy of iron, aluminium, nickel, cobalt, and copper, is quite high. It's about 4000 amperes per meter. But if you look at mu metal, an alloy of nickel, iron, copper, molybdenum, then this is just 3 amperes per meter. So which one of the two makes a better magnet? Let's say you are designing a permanent magnet. In fact, this discussion can lead me to design of permanent magnets, but I am not going to get into that. So but suppose you are trying to design a permanent magnet, then obviously you want high coercivity. So this works out. On the other hand, suppose you want to cut down hysteresis loss, then this coercivity being low will be an advantage to you, because the width of the strip is reduced drastically. So in such an application, you would probably prefer a mu metal over the alnico one. All right. Now let's do one example. Let's do one example. Uh, this example I have taken from uh, electrical technology by UGIS, and the example is as follows. The area of hysteresis loop obtained with a certain specimen of iron was 9.3 centimeter square. So you see this is the graph. This area will be in, because you draw it to scale. It's the number of squares that are enclosed are 9.3. The area enclosed is 9.3 centimeter square, where for the magnetic axis 1 centimeter is 1000 amperes per meter. So the H axis, what this is 1 centimeter, H 1 centimeter, the horizontal axis 1 centimeter, is given to be equal to 1000 amperes per meter, and for vertical axis 1 centimeter is 0.2 Tesla. So this is my vertical axis, and 1 centimeter here is going to be 0.2 Tesla. Okay. So our first question is, calculate the hysteresis loss per cycle. the per cubic meter. I remember I said that it is per cubic meter is what is the when you are dealing with B and H, it becomes per cubic meter. It's like density, and so the hysteresis loss per cubic meter per cycle. When you do one tracing of hysteresis loop, when you do one trace of hysteresis loop, your voltage applied has started from some, let's say, suppose you started from, current started from 0, increased, reduced, went in the negative direction, picked up, again came back to the original value. So one cycle in the AC, one cycle would have been uh, traced. So that's why uh, per cycle. And then the next is calculate the hysteresis loss per meter at a frequency of 50 hertz. So just if it is uh, uh, 50 times in 1 second, it will, with whatever number has come on in A, will have to be multiplied by 50. And if the maximum flux density was 1.5 Tesla, means whatever is given here, this I'm sorry, whatever is given here, this area corresponds to Bmax of 1.5 Tesla. Calculate the hysteresis loss per cubic meter for a maximum density of 1.2 Tesla and a frequency of 30 Hertz, assuming the loss to be proportional to Bmax to the power 1.8. So I told you that number is between 1.5 to 2.5. In this particular case, this number is given to be approximately this thing. So hysteresis loss, or maybe I should write it a bit here itself. I will write it. Hysteresis loss, and see, hysterical is one word. It's a bit difficult. One makes a lot of spelling mistakes when writing this word hysteresis. So you can think of it like HYSTE, hyste, is coming from the hysterical part, and resist is coming from the resistance part, and that's how you get this word hysteresis. So the hysteresis loss being proportional to volume, because we saw that it is per meter cube, so therefore it will be proportional to the volume of the core. What we saw is for one cycle, so if we want to actually calculate per second, and suppose 50 cycles are traced, or frequency is f, then it will have to be multiplied by f, and then you will get so many joules per second, which is uh, which is, it is proportional to V, it is proportional to F, and it is proportional to Bmax to the power some n. So Bmax to the power, some power of n. So this can be, therefore this hysteresis loss can be written as k times of, where k is the constant of proportionality, Bmax to the power of n. Suppose in case you don't know anything about that n, then you can just approximate it by 2, because when you don't know anything, you may have to do some approximations. But otherwise, actually they will give you a value for that particular material. Okay, so let's come to this particular question in hand now. It's a simple enough question. Let's go to A. First of all, let's write the area of the correct area. I mean, in the electrical terms, what is the area of the hysteresis loop? And that is given to be 9.3 centimeter square, and 1 centimeter on the x-axis is 1000 ampere turns per meter, and on the y-axis it is 0.2 Tesla. So therefore this product will become equal to 1860 is what actually in the electrical terms it will come out to be. The unit will of course be joules. So there, and this is the area of the hysteresis loop is is actually 1 point. I'll just maybe just write it here like this, 1860, and I'll therefore say that therefore hysteresis loss per cubic meter per cycle is going to be equal to 1860 joules, and hence at 50 hertz hysteresis loss will be 1860 into 50 joules per cubic meter. So that's very simple. Fine. And this would be turn out to be 93,000 watts or 93 kilowatts. That's not a small number. Now, okay. Now, if you come to the C part, what is given to us? It is what is given to us is that hysteresis loss corresponding to 1.5 Tesla. What is required for us is to calculate it at 1.2 Tesla and at 30 Hertz. So if you look at this formula, what we are given is n is 1.8 in this particular case, proportional to Bmax to the power 1.8. So n is given to you. F will change, sometimes 50, sometimes 30. Per meter cube is required, so V can be just taken as 1. This proportionality constant K is not known. So first, because we are given the hysteresis loss per cycle per cubic meter, and n is given to us to be 1.8, and Bmax correspondingly is given to be 1.5, and at that this number is given to be 1860 joules. So first of all we can calculate, so calculate the, so what we are saying is this H loss, I'll just write it like simply like this short form, is K V F B max to the power n. Now at 1.5 and n is given to be 1.8, the frequency, okay, we have calculated this as 93,000 at 50 hertz. Let's use that 93,000 at 50 hertz with 1 cubic meter, then the K has to be calculated. So this K, if you solve this, will turn out to be 896. So therefore now, for now next is what given to us is to calculate at Bmax equal to 1.2 Tesla and F equal to 30 hertz. What is the H loss? This is our question. Now we know K, so we can easily say that the hysteresis loss is going to be equal to value of K 896 into 1 into F, the frequency is 30, and Bmax is 1.2 to the power of 1.8, which is equal to 37,350 watts. Or you could have done it other way around also. You could have said that it is 93,000 watts at 50 hertz and 1.5. So it will reduce, when you reduce the frequency to 30 from 50, it will become 3/5 of that value. And when you reduce Bmax to 1.2 instead of 1.5, it will reduce by a factor of 1.2 by 1.5 to the power of 1.8, which will again give you this same number, 337,350 watts. Okay. Now let's come to the other loss component, which is the which is the eddy current loss component. So let's come to the eddy current loss component. So here I have taken uh, a DC machine example. Of course, DC machine we'll learn later on, but in this particular case, just important to notice is that I have a north pole here, a south pole here, a iron core called solid iron core called armature, which is mounted on a shaft which is rotated in this clockwise direction to begin with, and this is a solid iron core. So if you look at the direction of directly inside into the paper, so therefore the velocity direction here is shown by a cross, and the flux lines are coming from north to south, so therefore the B is shown here down, and the induced EMF is case proportional to length and cross product of B cross V, and the two angles being 90 degrees here. And if you rotate a right-handed screw from B to V, you would see that it is uh, it will create a EMF in this particular direction, and therefore that EMF will set a circulating or currents which are called also as eddies or eddy currents in this particular way. Now because so there will be many eddy currents. Eddy current is not one current. It's like you must have seen eddies in a pool of water or a river or a lake. As it hits the dam. So there, it's a these eddy current flows will very similar analogy is what is used here. So now what happens is this, because iron is a has low resistance. These induced EMF will create E by R, which is a large current, and hence the loss, which is proportional to I square R, will be E square by R. The loss will be E square by R. A large eddy current loss will be created. So now to cut it down, what we do is we laminate it. We laminate the core. So I have split 5 laminations. I have made this. So look at this picture if you want to look at this picture more carefully. This is the flux direction, and this picture I have taken from electrical engineering by Mulukutla Sarma. So in this picture, if you uh, look at, this is the flux axis. So if the, let's say the flux is increasing due to this current which is flowing like this, so it's the right-handed screw is moving inside and the flux is going up in the is increasing in the upward direction. Then to oppose it, a circulating current, uh, circulating volt induced EMF will have to be set up like this in the exactly, through the depth. It will have to be like this, then you have to trace like this, then the trace like this, and come back from behind like this. So the circulating current currents will be set up due to induced voltages, the eddies, which will try to oppose this change of flux. Now if you stack laminations instead of making it as one solid core, if you make laminations and stack it parallel to the flux axis, then what will happen? And then these laminations are connected, are pressed through some kind of a varnish. They are stuck together, and they create a high resistance in between. The stacking creates increases resistance in between. So this eddy currents will not flow like this all through. Instead, because of the low resistance path, they will, the moment they hit that insulation, they will turn around and loop back. So the eddy currents will now, instead of going like this all through, would be like small eddies will be. So we have broken the big eddies into uh, into the small eddies. That's what we have done here. Now let's see how it helps. So because uh, in this case the lamination, because if I have made, let's say, 5 laminations, right, like parallel to this axis laminations, I said, to the flux axis I made 5 of them. So the area of cross section, complete area of cross section was A. Now each lamination being only 1/5 of thickness, its width is reduced by 1/5 only. So the area is reduced by 1 by 5, and uh, so area is reduced by 1 by 5. So the flux enclosed is reduced by 1 by 5, and if the flux enclosed is reduced by 1 by 5, then the induced EMF, which is proportional to d phi by dt, will also reduce by 1 by 5. So in each of these lamination, only 1/5 of the voltage will be there. Now again, the area of cross section becoming 1 by 5, the resistance should become 5 times. Of course, this is assuming that the length is the same. It, because the length reduces, the resistance will not increase 5 times. In this case, it will actually probably increase 3 times. You can calculate it. But let's say that assuming L to be same, and the area of cross section having become 5 times, one area of cross section becoming 1/5, resistance, which is rho L by A, the area of cross section reducing, the resistance has increased by 5 times. So then what happens to the current, induced current in the lamination? It has now reduced to 1, 1 by 5 of E into 5 times divided by 5 times of R, or therefore 1 by 25 E by R. So the I square R loss per lamination in the solid, I square R, if I look at the ratio of I square R loss uh, per lamination divided by I square R loss in solid core, which is basically related to this, then that number will turn out to be square of the current. What is the square of the current? Current has become 1/5. So the sorry, the current has become 1 by 25. So therefore 1 by 25 I square has reduced by 1 by 25. So I square ratio will become 1 by 25 square, and the resistance has increased 5 times. So the R ratio will become 5, and so you will get around 125. 1 by 125 is the new ratio. That means the I square loss per lamination is only 1 by 125th of the I square loss in the solid core. Now, because you have 5 laminations, the total loss will be 5 times this 5 into 1 by 125, or the factor actually becomes 1 by 5 square. What we are trying to now say here is that the total eddy current loss in the laminated core is, if you look at it, inversely proportional to the number of the square of laminations. Now, therefore, we would want to have as many laminations as possible, so we will keep on reducing the thickness of lamination. But when the thickness of the lamination goes below 0.4 mm, then usually it is found that the cost of making it does not justify the savings, and so it tends to get expensive. Second, if in the iron, instead of iron, you use silicon iron alloy with say 4% silicon, you can automatically increase the resistivity of iron so as to cut down on the currents resistance. Once you increase, the eddy current losses will automatically reduce because of that. So finally, uh, eddy current losses are basically dependent upon, are proportional to the square of the flux, square of the flux, because V Vm, you will see this very clear. clearly that this phi m is proportional to Vm that I apply when I do this transformers. You will see this even more neatly, this particular thing. So therefore, and the losses here the are basically V I square R or V square by R. So therefore they are proportional to phi m square. So that's why they are proportional to phi m square, and also the square of the square of frequency. So hence this also you will see the square of frequency thing also will be more clear later on when I discuss this in more detail. So there and so the eddy current losses are proportional to eddy current losses are proportional to, you can say that, proportional to volume square of frequency Bm square and la lamination thickness tau. This is lamination, sorry, thickness. So that's why smaller the lamination, the smaller will be the uh, number of so if L is the smaller the lamination, lower will be the PE. So this is here lamination thickness. Here it is number of the square of the inversely proportional we have shown is the number of the lamination. So smaller the lamination thickness, higher is the number of the lamination. So larger is this number in the denominator, lower is this ratio. Both these equations are essentially saying the same thing. Okay, I think we will uh, we will we will close hysteresis loss and eddy current loss here. Later on, when I discuss equivalent circuits, I will show you that this can be actually modeled as a resistive element in parallel with the inductance which is associated with the magnetic material called iron. But that's a story for the future. Thank you.